Excuse me.
He's cutting in now.
I do like that impersonation. Could you do it again, please?
Which one?
The one of me.
The one of you?
The one of me, the way I came in this morning.
Yeah, no, I can't do it again.
You can't?
No.
Oh, that's a shame.
I can't.
It was the best impersonation I think I've ever heard.
You know, the trouble is with me is when I do an impersonation once, that's it. It's gone. It's lost in the...
It's a short-term memory.
It is.
It's a drugs, mate.
What's your name? Apparently, it appears that the successful filmmaker, a middle-aged and built like a beer barrel, has been exposed as a lecher. And that's a story. What's happened to journalism? The headline that would really cause the breakfast toast to fall from nervous fingers would be, despite the presence of thousands of fame-hungry starlets, there's not a single dirty old man in Hollywood. Don't hold your breath. And that's, we'll be talking about that later on. Well, we're going to talk about it now, actually, because it seems that every female that ever walked on God's earth, with few exceptions, are all claiming now about their own little mucky stories, you know, about how they've been groped or raped or whatever by all these different people. Judy Finnegan in the Daily Express writes that she went back, she was 18 years of age, and she went back to a film, very well-known film TV producer in this country. She doesn't name him, and she went back to his flat after a party to have a coffee, and he went in the kitchen and he came out, and to quote the article in the paper, excuse me, came out with his dangly bits hanging out, and she said to me, "Oh, I'm not that sort of girl," and promptly left, you know. Now, I'm sorry, but that to me is not a story. That's just somebody trying to sort of say, you know, well, look at that, you know, there, but for the grace of goodness goes me, you know.
Wishful thinking.
Excuse me. I don't know about. Well,
there's a clear line, and you know, clearly that Hollywood producer has overstepped it.
Of course it has.
But it's very difficult. When's horseplay not horseplay? The political correct people would say that you can't have horseplay, but I was brought up with horseplay. We had a bit of fun. We used to do all sorts of things, and I mean, I suppose the age difference is the main thing, isn't it? Really, I mean, I think if you're a bunch of 20-year-olds and you go around and you're having a bit of a laugh with each other, that's one thing. When you've got a 20-year-old and a 60-year-old, that becomes something slightly different. And when that person's got a position of power, that becomes something different. So I totally accept that, but I do think sometimes thou dost protest a little too much.
I mean, when I worked in advertising, it was an accepted thing that, you know, the younger secretary come around and they sit on your lap, you know, when they were talking to you and this sort of stuff. It was all free and easy, but nobody ever complained.
It was the standard of the time.
Yeah, we were all in our 20s, you know, or younger.
Yeah, I go back to what I was saying. If you're all the same age, it doesn't seem to matter. It's when the age differential gets there. You know, a compliment paid by a 20-year-old guy to a 20-year-old girl would probably make her blush. A compliment paid to that 20-year-old girl by a 60-year-old guy could be a HR issue.
Yeah, you're quite right. You're quite right.
It's a great shame, really, but I suppose that's because of the difference between men and women, isn't it?
I'm a bit horrified this morning by Robert Mugabe has been named Goodwill Ambassador by the World Health Organization. Why are people giving this man any sort of awards? I mean, he's got a terrible human rights record. What do you think about this?
He was trained at Sandhurst.
What's that got to do with it?
Well, anybody trained at Sandhurst gets an award at some point in their life.
Is that right?
It's a default setting, sir.
Oh, right, okay. Kevin, you're very quiet this morning.
He's trying to drink his tea.
And I guess that... Yes, I'm just reflecting actually on 39 years of marriage this morning.
What's that got to do with the price of eggs?
It's got nothing to do with that.
Congratulations,
it's getting more random, this programme this morning, isn't it?
And I've just realised that I've been a goodwill ambassador to my wife.
You're quite right.
39 years now.
Have you?
I have, yeah.
Will she say the same thing?
I think she would, yes.
I hope so.
You know, like any couple, I guess we have our moments, but there has been nothing serious at all.
Dreadful wedding pictures. Dreadful wedding pictures.
I Well, there's a bit of exciting news for us this morning. Some people are happy together. Well,
there's a cue for a song.
I think this is the most random programme we've done to date, and I think I should add to the randomness.
We're trying to get you in bad mood, that's all.
I think we need to do a weather forecast.
I think we should carry on.
Haven't we got a hurricane or something coming?
We'll talk about that a little later on.
Oh, will we?
Yeah, Brian's not quite here with us yet. It's just,
it should be called Ryan, shouldn't it?
He's coming across Ireland.
He's coming from Ireland.
Yeah. I don't know whether you saw in the paper this week, there's a picture of a load of policemen on dodgems having a ride around and all the rest of it.
Good on them.
It's exactly, it just makes me laugh. It actually, it's probably done more good to the police force by letting them do it than actually there's people that are going about it and saying, no, they shouldn't have been there doing it, and this is all this and that.
I expect you got that story from the Daily Mail.
I didn't touch it.
It was on TV as well. Was it? Yeah. But it's gone beyond that now, because there's two went to a call in I think it was a supermarket, dressed in funny animal heads, and they've been slated over. And then there's been guys walking about in stiletto heels.
Well, I think it's absolutely great that we live in a country where the police force can walk around in stiletto heels if they want to. I've experienced some of the other police forces of this world, and we should be very grateful for the positive attitude of the British police.
Well, you've had this in Florida as well, haven't you, Mike? When you stopped to ask the way, and you should have done that because you risk being shot. I did this. There had been a murder in here in Coral Gables one night outside Miami, and these coppers were really, really aggressive, and all I wanted to know was where my hotel was, But you've had the same thing, haven't you? He says.
We are policed by consent in this country, aren't we? And that's the real beauty of the British police over some of the other police forces. When I looked at what happened in Spain, I wondered, could that happen here if, for instance, the Scottish people were doing a referendum that hadn't been agreed by the British Parliament? Would the police be dragging girls out by their hair in Dunblane?
I doubt it very much.
Would they be going into Glasgow and kicking people and hitting them?
Oh well, I don't think you've been in Glasgow for some time, because the Scottish police, when the closing time was 10 o'clock and you had 10 minutes drinking up time, and I've experienced this on several occasions in Scotland and nearly got arrested as well for arguing with a copper, because they would come into the lounge, they'd come into the pub and they would go right down to the other end, and then they would walk back, and it would be like they had a glass shield in front of them, and everybody in front was just pushed out into the street, because the drinking up time was 10 o'clock, and that was it. It was closing time at 10 o'clock.
And could you understand what the Scottish police said to you, though? This is more to the point.
Well, this is why I sort of did get sort of nearly cuffed on an occasion, because I sort of argued that, and I still got 3/4 of a pint of beer, and I said that, well, in England they close at 10:30, and so I think he was trying to tell me that I wasn't in England anymore, but and they can be, the Scottish police can be pretty unfriendly, not maybe as much as the Spanish police.
It's a Guardia Civil, though, I think more in Spain, isn't it? They've always been problematic. I remember a friend of mine was working on boats or something in Mallorca, and he was on a bus one night, and the inspector got on checking tickets, and he dropped his on the floor and couldn't find it, and the Guardia Civil, in fact they drove the bus to the Guardia Civil office, and he was tied to a post and got a good thumping in a cell, and that's what they used to be like. I mean, they used to be renowned for it. These are the guys in the patent leather.
Perhaps if we dealt with fare dodgers in this country in a similar manner, we'd have less fraud on the underground.
Well, maybe.
And you brought that round nicely there, haven't you? Fair dodgers, back to the dodgems.
Back to the dodgems. Well, okay, but going back to that though, I do think that people making stories up in the newspapers become really a fine art. They can criticise just about any aspect of human behaviour. you can make anything sound bad, and it's a journalistic trait, and it's really quite irritating. I've been looking at some of the headlines in some of the papers recently, and they have been appalling. The way in which they distort the reality of what's going on. We're subjected to so much propaganda. So much of it. I mean, radio, television. I really find it difficult to know what's true, what isn't true.
You're right.
I mean, false news is epidemic. The Facebook people were saying that there's no doubt about the amount of influence the Russians had in the American election with their misinformation. When you've got 3 different papers all giving 3 different headlines about the same subject, you go, okay, well, it's like pick the one you want. So I think the new skill that we've all got to develop, and particularly our young people have got to develop, is filtering the news to try and work out, in amongst all the lies, it is spot the truth.
Could be a degree course, couldn't it?
Spotting the truth.
Yeah, but they've said now the Russians have been involved. I reckon there's claims in the Brexit vote now, isn't there?
It doesn't surprise me at all, because it's absolutely in the Russians' favour for the UK to leave Europe. They would absolutely love that, because anything that weakens Europe, that nation on their border, is they would feel very positive about.
But is it any different to how it's always been? It's just the technical side of things now.
That's right.
Someone has always been putting their foot or nose into someone else's politics.
Yeah, I think it was a slower process. I mean, it took a lot longer for the news to travel and the word to spread. And I think things that happened over a decade in history can happen in a matter of minutes now. And that's what's really changed, is the speed at which you can actually have that sort of political...
Yeah, but that doesn't detract from the fact that it's still the same. It's always happened, and it always will happen.
Yes, it doesn't detract from it.
Just get faster and faster.
Just a question of timing, sir.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, going back to the police, I mean, apparently now they're saying that a lot of police forces now are dumping burglaries. They're just not even going to bother investigating.
That's it, 1 in 10 or something is getting investigated. Now, that is outrageous. And you can see what people will be saying. They're too busy playing dodgems to go and cat.
Yeah.
But
no, the Daily Mail would say that.
The bottom line is, well, as far as I'm concerned, and this is a slight twist, I guess, there's not enough police.
Oh, that's right.
They should be doubling the police force in this country to make sure that the vast majority of law-abiding citizens can stay at home safe. Let's get more police on the streets. The British police have, generally speaking, had a really good reputation for being fair and honest, up until fairly recently, not carrying guns and all this sort of stuff, whereas the rest of the world, and it's been mentioned here this morning by Bob, with the Spanish and the Americans, they've got their guns, and it's more intimidation rather than what's the word?
Sorry, I mean, we've been very kind to the police this morning, but when you say the police have got a reputation for being truthful and honest, I'm sorry, but have you been reading the papers in the last sort of decade about things like Hillsborough?
I know, I take your point. There are always bad apples, no matter what.
It's not bad apple. Yeah, it's an endemic.
Have you ever seen Dixon or Dock Green?
I have seen Dixon or Dock Green, but actually telling lies is endemic within the police force.
You're quite right. I mean, I've had personal experience of this, as I'm sure you have.
I have had personal experience of barefaced lies told by police officers. And I also had a good spanking in the back of a police car, which was a wake-up call. It was a joy to behold.
Enjoyed that one.
I will say, having refereed the MK police team on a Sunday morning, I can tell you they were some Herberts.
Aren't they dirty?
I will say that.
But it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. At least there's a sort of, the police aren't going to actually be truthful, so we know that. It's a given known. If you know it, you can deal with it. I'm talking about another level of policing, which is the policing on the streets, where the kids have got to have some sort of confidence in the police, or else we really are lost as a society. And the fact that some policemen do some silly things at Notting Hill Carnival and they have a bit of a laugh and a joke, they're serious underneath that. They're just showing their humane side, and I think that's really important, that actually we know that the police are human. It's human to lie, to defend yourself. That's what they do.
I think we've got to sort out in this country what the police really stand for, whether they're going to become a political arm of the government, as they seem to be going in that direction, or whether they're there to protect the people, the public, which seems to have been lost somewhere in the equation, don't you think?
Do you know, I think the answer lies in the soil.
In the soil.
I think the answer is actually very, very simple, and that is the fact that many, many years ago, you joined the police force and